The moon hung high, an ethereal orb in a sea of inky black. Its pale light cast long, eerie shadows across the overgrown lawn. Mist, like ghostly fingers, curled around the dilapidated Victorian house. Silent and watchful it stood, a monument to forgotten memories. Daniel shivered, pulling his coat tighter against the cold. A thrill tingled down his spine. He'd always been drawn to the unknown. Tonight it beckoned him forth. He placed a foot on the cracked concrete step leading to the front porch. It crumbled under his weight. The old oak door groaned as he pushed it open. Dust motes danced in the slivers of moonlight that pierced the gloom. The air inside was heavy, stagnant. The scent of decay hung thick and oppressive. Daniel took a hesitant step inside. The floorboards creaked in protest. Silence descended, broken only by the pounding of Daniel's heart. He strained his ears, listening for any sound in the oppressive stillness. Was that a whisper he heard? A soft, mournful sigh that seemed to emanate from the very walls themselves? He pushed open a door on his right. The room was empty, devoid of furniture. Moonlight spilled through a broken window, illuminating dust motes swirling in the air. Daniel felt a cold spot despite the warmth of the night. He quickly left the room, closing the door firmly behind him. He climbed the grand staircase, its velvet runner now threadbare and faded. Each step creaked a mournful lament. Shadows danced at the edge of his vision. He paused, listening for any sound. The house seemed to hold its breath. On the landing, a sudden gust of wind slammed a door shut. Daniel whirled around. His heart pounded against his ribs. But there was nothing there. He was alone, or was he? He entered a room at the end of the hallway. The door creaked open, revealing a space that seemed frozen in time. Dust particles floated in the air, illuminated by the faint light seeping through the cracked window. The room had an unsettling stillness, as if it had been waiting for someone to disturb its eerie peace. It was a child's nursery. The walls were adorned with faded, peeling wallpaper, depicting cheerful scenes that now seemed grotesque in the dim light. Forgotten toys lay scattered across the floor, each one a relic of a time long past. A rocking horse stood frozen mid-gallop in the corner. Its once vibrant paint was now chipped and dull, covered in a thick layer of dust. It seemed to be waiting for a child who would never return. A doll lay discarded on the floor, its porcelain face cracked and staring. The eyes, though lifeless, seemed to follow Daniel as he moved through the room. It was as if the doll held secrets of its own, whispering them to anyone who dared to listen. As Daniel stepped closer, he felt a sharp drop in temperature. The warmth of the hallway was replaced by an icy chill that seemed to seep into his bones. He shivered, pulling his coat tighter around him, but it did little to ward off the cold. The air grew heavy, oppressive. It was as if the room itself was alive, breathing down his neck, making it hard to draw a full breath. The atmosphere was thick with an unspoken tension, a sense of dread that hung in the air like a dark cloud. He bent down, picking up the doll. Its weight was surprising, heavier than he expected. The cracked porcelain felt cold and smooth under his fingers, a stark contrast to the rough, dusty floor. As he brushed the dust from its face, he could have sworn he heard a soft giggle. It was faint, almost imperceptible, but it sent a chill down his spine. He paused, listening intently. But the room was silent once more. It seemed to come from right behind him. He spun around. No one was there. The room was empty, but the feeling of being watched was undeniable. His heart pounded in his chest as he scanned the shadows for any sign of movement. But the feeling of being watched intensified. It was as if unseen eyes were boring into him, observing his every move. The oppressive atmosphere grew thicker, and Daniel knew he had to leave the room, but his feet felt rooted to the spot. The nursery, once a place of joy, had become a prison of fear. Section 6. A ghostly apparition. He turned to leave the nursery when he saw her, a woman in a flowing white gown. She stood at the foot of the crib, her back to him. Her long dark hair cascaded down her back, almost reaching the floor. He could see the spectral form of a baby in her arms. Daniel's breath caught in his throat. He tried to speak, but no sound came out. He stood frozen, caught between fear and fascination. Who was she, and what was she doing here? Section 7. Fleeting Whisper. As if sensing his presence, the woman slowly turned. The moonlight illuminated her face. It was a face etched with sorrow, her eyes filled with a deep, unending sadness. She opened her mouth as if to speak, but only a faint whisper escaped her lips. "Help me," she breathed, her voice a mournful whisper that sent shivers down Daniel's spine. He took a step towards her, his hand outstretched. He wanted to help, to offer her comfort. But as he drew closer, she began to fade. Section 8. A hasty retreat. The ghostly apparition grew fainter, her form flickering like a candle in the wind. The room seemed to hold its breath, as if the very walls were aware of the spectral presence. Shadows danced eerily on the walls, cast by the flickering candlelight. Then, with a final heart-wrenching sigh, she vanished. It was as if she had never been there, leaving behind only a chilling memory and a cold draught that swept through the room. The room was plunged back into an eerie silence. The once lively atmosphere was now replaced with an unsettling stillness. The air felt heavy, almost suffocating, as if the room itself was mourning the loss of the ghostly figure. Daniel stood there for a moment, his heart pounding in his chest. He was alone. The realization hit him like a ton of bricks, and a wave of fear washed over him. His mind raced, trying to make sense of what he had just witnessed. He backed out of the room, his eyes darting from shadow to shadow. Every creak of the floorboards, every rustle of the curtains seemed amplified in the deafening silence. He felt as though the shadows were watching him, waiting for him to make a move. He had to get out of this house, now. Panic surged through his veins, and he could feel his pulse quickening. The walls seemed to close in on him, and the air grew colder with each passing second. He ran down the hallway, his footsteps echoing in the stillness. The long, dark corridor seemed endless, and every step he took felt like he was running in place. The eerie silence was broken only by the sound of his own frantic breathing. He didn't stop running until he was out of the house and back in the safety of the moonlit night. The cool night air hit his face, and he gasped for breath, his heart still racing. The house loomed behind him, dark and foreboding, a silent witness to the terror he had just experienced. He vowed never to return, the memory of the ghostly apparition forever etched in his mind. Section 9. The Lingering Enigma. This chapter delves into the haunting experiences of Daniel, a man whose life was forever altered by a single fateful encounter. It all began on a cold moonlit night when he stumbled upon an abandoned Victorian house, shrouded in mystery and whispers of the past. Daniel never returned to the abandoned Victorian house. The eerie silence and the chilling atmosphere were too much for him to bear. The house, with its broken windows and decaying walls, seemed to hold secrets that were better left undisturbed. Yet the memory of that night lingered in his mind, refusing to fade away. But he never forgot the ghostly woman in white or her plea for help. Her ethereal presence was etched into his memory, her sorrowful eyes and outstretched hand, a constant reminder of the unresolved mysteries that haunted the old house. Who was she? What had happened to her? These questions tormented Daniel, keeping him awake at night. The experience left an indelible mark on his soul, a constant reminder of the mysteries that lie hidden in the shadows. Daniel found himself unable to escape the grip of the past. The ghostly encounter had opened a door to a world he never knew existed, a world where the line between the living and the dead was blurred. And though he never knew her story, he often wondered about the woman and her child. Were they at peace, or were they still trapped in a limbo, unable to move on? The photograph he found in the house, depicting a woman and a child, only deepened the mystery. It was a haunting image that seemed to speak of a tragic past. Or were they still trapped within those crumbling walls, their mournful cries echoing in the stillness of the night? The house itself seemed to be alive, its decaying structure whispering secrets of the past. Every creak and groan of the old wood seemed to tell a story of sorrow and loss, a story that Daniel could never fully understand. The answer, like the ghosts themselves, remained shrouded in mystery. The graveyard nearby, with its weathered tombstones and thick fog, added to the eerie atmosphere. It was a place where the past and present seemed to collide, where the living could feel the presence of the dead. Daniel often found himself drawn to this place, seeking answers that eluded him. A chilling enigma that would haunt him forever. The deserted road he walked at night, the moonlight casting long shadows, seemed to mirror his own journey. A journey filled with unanswered questions and a lingering sense of unease. The shadowy figure under the street lamp, a constant reminder of the night that changed everything. Daniel knew that some mysteries were never meant to be solved, and some ghosts never truly laid to rest.